right, well, hey everybody, Chris Haddon here from Greenshades Software. Thanks for joining today's webinar. Just a little bit about me. Some of you may have heard my voice before or seen me before on webinars. I've been at Greenshades since 2009, so I've been here for for a few years now. In that time, kind of as the slideshow, had a lot of different roles over the years. Been really pleased to have been at Greenshades for so long. I've worked both on the product team and compliance team, quality assurance, done a lot with the support team, and then here on the sales side of things and oversee the sales engineering team. And then prior to coming to Greenshades, which feels like forever ago, a lot of my background was really on the retail and hospitality side. And so certainly when it comes to restaurants and hospitality, I have a lot of appreciation for the complexity related to managing workforce and high turnover environments, which when it comes to staffing, that's a very, very common theme there for that. So anyways, again, thanks everybody for joining today. Look forward to chatting with all of you a little bit more here later in the presentation. And Will, I'll hand it off to you now.
Yeah, hey everybody. Just like Chris said, thank you for giving us the time here today. Will DiGiovanni, I've been with Greenshades coming up on 7 years, kind of like Chris. Wore a few different hats within the organization as we've grown. Right now, my role is a payroll account executive with a focus on staffing. So I know I've probably talked to you on this call, and I'm sure I'll be reaching out, after this call as well. Okay, so for today's agenda, we're going to highlight kind of our, partnership with Bullhorn, go over some obstacles in the staffing world. You may be facing, the solutions we can provide to turn those obstacles into opportunities. And at the very end, we'll be doing a brief demonstration, kind of a high-level overview of our payroll system. If you want a deeper dive, please reach out to us after this webinar here. Happy to schedule, discovery calls, demonstrations, kind of walking down the path of what we can provide and improve your business processes. Of course, as stated, if there are any questions, we'll do a Q&A at the end. So please feel free to post there in the chat and we'll get to them. So we're going to talk about here some obstacles, and how with the correct processes and technology stack, you could turn those obstacles into opportunities to grow your organization. So there's, a lot of challenges facing, employers all around. Those challenges seem to have, greater effects within the staffing industry, just due kind of the nature of your business. And especially over, the past few years with COVID and what's, come and become, cultural norms since, kind of COVID slowed down, some of the trends here. So, whether it be terms like the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, those are things to kind of be aware of and monitor, what's kind of out there in the ethosphere, kind of what employees are gravitating towards, other things specifically to, staffing, skill shortages, higher competition as technology has grown and allowed organizations kind of streamline their processes, outdated strategies, that if you don't have the right tech stuff, or tech stack, what, that can lead to. Here's some numbers we've pulled just here on this slide. So it seems that staffing's off to a slower start this year. Still historically, increasing and, looks better than other years, but a little slower this year than last year. Some high level numbers here, any given week, about 3 million temporary employees are being paid, around 16 million total at the end of the year. So staffing is still a very strong indicator of our economy as it, employs so many people in so many different fields. So this is one stat we pulled here. 64% of staffing employees work in industry to fill gaps between jobs, or obviously, help them land that permanent job, leaning more towards kind of the gap filling. So we've seen through the Great Resignation, especially in the tech world, a lot of large layoffs here. So a lot of, high skilled labor is coming into the marketplace and, really just looking to have that temporary job as they search for a more permanent gig, especially in the tech industry, as organizations are ramping down, eventually they'll ramp back up. So a lot of people are just kind of looking for temporary gaps or temporary fill positions. So with the technology we're going to be covering here, kind of tell you how we can help you, get those assignments quickly placed and payroll processes in place to support those employees. And then of course with COVID, working from home is a big big bonus a lot of employees are looking for. It depends really on the industry, as the industries can kind of support that. But a lot of employees, are kind of requesting that as they look at, jobs. What that's led to is greater kind of pool of talent you can pull from. You're not kind of pigeonholed to, wherever your client's locations may be. You can kind of pull from a greater resource around the country. With that come certain issues, tax implications, keeping employees engaged, being able to attract the talent. So we kind of covering how those challenges can be met. All right. So what do those kind of numbers mean in the real world implications? So one, having a larger volume of applicants, on one hand is great, larger people to pull from, but being able to attract that large pool, identify, the correct skill set in an employee, can be challenging, and through Bullhorn, that's something they are, specializing in. So trying to pull in all that applicant data, recruiting, job placements, those are things that can be handled in their solution. High volume onboarding. So, time is money. So bringing employees in fast, is key, to get in those job placements. And then, on the other end, having those employees, set up in a correct payroll solution to get everything, tax code assignment, earnings, is really, really critical in the business mission. So also, having such high turnover, employees moving, having payroll set up, like I said, is critical, and getting employees paid in a timely manner. One, is a compliance aspect. Two, really increases, the employees are able to attract. So having a payroll system where, you can have earned wage access, same day pay is really a benefit. A lot of staffing companies are kind of adapting that model. That way they can attract, people from large pools and, kind of want that earned wage access.
Yeah, and I'll just mention here, I was going to chime in a moment ago, and then I had a bit of a coughing fit and couldn't jump in timely. But when Will mentioned right there about the kind of the trends of working from home, it's really interesting, because it's probably 9 or 10 years ago now, when I was originally sitting to study and prepare for the certified payroll professional exam, I did some on-site training out west, and there were some conversations with other payroll professionals that time about remote work and some of the employees that were working from home and just some of the tax challenges associated with that. And it was such a rare thing at that time. And then, there's been so many conversations about that over the last couple of years now, as so many workers have gone remote, and so many companies that, we're trying to prepare for that kind of on the fly from an infrastructure perspective, but, they kind of looked aside, or most of the company wasn't really thinking about the payroll and the tax compliance aspect of that. And so that's a really difficult thing to solve for. So, a lot of systems, obviously, we're trying to kind of update as quickly as possible to accommodate that, but there's just a whole, just opens up so many more challenges, right? There's a lot of flexibility that can offer those employees, but I talked firsthand to so many companies that would find out, hey, they've had a number of employees that were now living in different states, and they weren't even aware of that. And so it's definitely something to be really mindful of, and certainly be aware of those tax implications, and also trying to spread that education internally to the organization, so that organization, your employees and your workforce can appreciate why it's so important to be aware of those scenarios when they have a change of address and that type of thing, and making sure you have an easy way for them to document those types of changes. So go ahead, Will. I just wanted
to... For sure. No, thanks for adding that. Me personally, I'm working remote and moved over the last year, and I know it was kind of non-issue within Greenshades just because of how easy it is to set up and transition employees into different locations. So how can those challenges turn into opportunities for you? So if you're prepared, if you adopted newer strategies, newer technology, it can really put you a step ahead of your competitors, allow you to grow and really enter in new markets that maybe before you were kind of scared to enter, whether it's compliance reasons or you didn't have the places in pieces in place to kind of conquer those challenges. So on the front end, we have that partnership with Bullhorn. So their applicant tracking, onboarding, job placement really allows you to identify, track, and connect with the best candidates at scale. So they're able to handle kind of all that, front office processes, and we're able to take that information, and kind of simplify those back office processes around payroll, tax, and compliance. So all kind of critical candidate information can be collected, stored within Bullhorn, and that's information we're able to capture on the back end. That way, you're really just setting up an employee kind of once within your front office solution and in the back office payroll. And how Greenshades can kind of streamline that is doing kind of automatic text code assessments. So that allows you to really simplify your compliance. Allowing us to handle that. So you may have clients that work, in other states that you aren't able to support just because maybe you didn't have the internal staff, to monitor compliance or, have them around to do kind of that manual data entry. So those are things we can really, support and streamline for you, between our partnership. One source of data, allowing the front end and back office to talk together, set employees up and get them to work. So you're not having to spend time on that. You're spending your time looking for, avenues to increase revenue. All right, so now we can kind of introduce Greenshades Bullhorn partnership. So we've been a marketplace partner now going on 2 years. Before that, just being that, obviously their focus on staffing and our staffing client base, been aware and have worked together, throughout the years. We really can formalize that partnership here about 2 years ago. So we're really acting as the back-end payroll processing, tax, and compliance piece. Now, Greenshades at its core, we're kind of a horizontal offering, with staffing being our largest focus. So we can really help you in a lot of different ways, depending on the technology systems you already have in place. So we can see here in this graphic, kind of everything we can do. But if you're looking for a kind of pick and play solution, that's also something, a role we're accustomed to. So obviously the payroll compliance being our focus as a company, but plenty of things on the HR side. So, if there's kind of gaps there you're looking to fill, we may have solutions in place, whether it be Affordable Care Act tracking, benefit management, time and labor management for your internal staff, not necessarily temporary employees, but for your internal staff. Those are things that we have in place in our solution you can utilize. All right, so Greenshades Bullhorn, we've both been around for 20 plus years, really largely supporting the staffing world. So Greenshades, we have, throughout the years, thousands of staffing companies, helping them out with the kind of hard issues. So whether that was garnishment management, tax filings, or employee self-service, been really invested in the staffing role for quite some time. And of course, with the Greenshades unified payroll platform, taking over that payroll processing here in the last few years. So what that kind of benefits us here on one side, we're very staffing focused. We know kind of the complications you focus, but also being that horizontal offering, we're aware of the other industries. So, you are a staffing industry at your core, but, your clients may be in agriculture, food and beverage, construction. You can really lean on us for not only the staffing knowledge, but those other industries as well as, we're aware of those complexities and compliance that comes around it. That makes us a really good fit for staffing organizations. And that kind of leads in here to, the Greenshades difference. So like I said, built for staffing, but, we work with all those industries. So kind of aware of everything. Our tax and compliance, that's really at our core. So, what you can utilize there is quickly moving into territories, not having to worry of, maintaining tax rates or compliance changes that come with those new territories. Those are all things we already have built into our solution. That way, as you move in, you're good to go and you can get your employees to work, increasing that revenue. All right, and then here I'm going to kind of turn it over to Chris so he can kind of talk through that Greenshades Bullhorn integration and go through a quick product demonstration.
As Will was just noting here, so I'm going to provide a little bit more information on the actual integration and the partnership, and then we can run through and do a live demonstration. As Will mentioned, I'm going to try to keep it high level just for the sake of everybody's time today. But of course, obviously happy to provide more of a direct, personalized, one-on-one demonstration and additional conversations as needed. But big picture, I'm not entirely sure kind of across all the audience that's here today and listening, how many of you are maybe already on Bullhorn or Bullhorn One today, or maybe have some exposure to it or some experience looking at it in the past. But as we're kind of laying this out here, the goal of this kind of flow chart is just to really show where Greenshades comes into play. So to kind of orient yourself with what we're looking at right here, basically everything to the left of this dotted line is essentially, this is the Bullhorn One platform made by the folks at Bullhorn. Best of breed solution within the staffing industry, fantastic organization to work with and a fantastic technology and software that they have here to take advantage of. So, this is really where all of the kind of the client management is taking place. This is where all of the jobs are being posted and the candidates are being managed, and where ultimately those placements are happening. There's a full kind of employee self-service and onboarding system that they have available. So as Will noted earlier, when we're looking at Greenshades, again, today we're going to primarily be focused on the payroll side of things, where Greenshades comes in to help get those workers paid and then ultimately get those taxes submitted in a timely manner. But especially for our internal workforce, for the folks that aren't necessarily being managed in the staffing solution directly, we have a full payroll and HR platform that's available, can help manage the workforce, hire to retire. So, the folks that are on the contingent workforce, they might be managed within Bullhorn One, but then for all of our internal recruiters and operations and just kind of the full-time folks, they can absolutely utilize Greenshades beyond just getting the paycheck. There is a full employee self-service portal, and from a security standpoint, that of course can all be kind of structured out to where again you can kind of delineate that access as needed. But really, where Greenshades is fitting into the conversation today, and I'll go through these screens in more detail, but big picture, as candidates are added into Bullhorn, there's some critical information that's provided about those workers that's collected in large part through that onboarding process, right? There's an applicant side of things, an applicant tracking system. They ultimately, they get hired, they get imported into the system. Those candidate records get created within Bullhorn, and that key information is going to flow automatically into Greenshades. So when you think about things like employee name and social security number and mailing address and really critical information like that, all of that's going to flow automatically into Greenshades. And then as those candidates work through that workflow within Bullhorn One, and they ultimately get submitted and placed into a job, that additional amount of data is going to flow again into Greenshades, all automatically. And so as the time is being collected of those workers through a variety of means that are available within Bullhorn to collect those those hours for those workers, ultimately all of that again automatically flows into the Greenshades payroll engine. So as we go in and look at here in just a minute, all of those hours are flowing right into the payroll process. So it's a very seamless experience. The payroll processing occurs, the key data is collected and tracked, and then ultimately sent back into Bullhorn One, ultimately for the kind of billing and gross margin reporting side of things. And then really, Greenshades is going to be utilized for not only actually producing that pay, doing that gross to net payroll, but also for managing those payroll taxes and submitting those taxes to the appropriate tax agencies. So again, Greenshades right here, this is where we fit into that overall flow within Bullhorn. So I'm going to just
Chris, I'm just going to add, I'm sure you'll touch on it here on the product. We know that, some clients require that the employees clock in through their timekeeping solution. So obviously we're able to pull the data from Bullhorn, but we're also, very used to pulling information from other systems, through API flat files. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that as when it comes to employee time and earnings.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate you bringing that up. So certainly, if Bullhorn One is in the picture, and all of that data is going to be flowing over, but there's a tremendous amount of flexibility around both where that time is actually coming from. To Will's point, they can load directly into the pay run engine, but then also just where those workers are coming from. Period. So there's a variety of means of getting data into the Greenshades platform. So ultimately, depending on kind of where those records are coming from, there's a means to to get that data into Greenshades. So a lot of flexibility, and frankly, we have a very large number of staffing organizations that are using Greenshades, but we service all industries and frankly quite all shapes and sizes. Right? We've got companies that have that are using us today that have 10 or 15 employees. I mean, very, very small operations and in that scenario. And then we have other organizations that have 10 or 15,000 employees and more that are using Greenshades. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of scalability that comes along with the Greenshades payroll and HR platform. All right, so what we're looking at now, though, this is Greenshades Online. So this is a web-based application. Anyone in your organization that is a payroll and HR professional or finance professional, anybody that should be involved in actually getting those employees paid, or maybe managing benefits and managing the HR side of the house, those individuals can have access to Greenshades Online. Of course, it's cloud-based. They can access it from anywhere with an internet connection. We were talking about kind of the disruption that happens over the last few years, and dealing with remote workforce and all of that. Of course, this is all cloud-based. So whether you're working in a physical office, as I am actually doing so right now, or if you're working from home, all of this is available to you to access at any point. I'll also note, here I'm kind of operating in this single environment right here, but we can easily support multiple legal entities within the same kind of overall operating environment. So within a single login. So if you're managing multiple lines of businesses, multiple EINs, all that can be accessed with a single login, and you can easily navigate between those different companies. So for the critical aspects of tax reporting, everything is split out as necessary to get those tax agencies paid under the correct EIN. However, as far as just everyday use of the platform, it's very easy to navigate between those different organizations. All right, so big picture, again, what we're looking at here, Greenshades Online, we have all of our employee records that have been loaded into the platform. So I can go in here at any point, I can see my employee list, I can see the workers that I have in my organization. Again, whether these workers came from Bullhorn, or these workers were imported in from another system, or they went through the onboarding workflow within Greenshades, or the integrated applicant tracking system that we have, whatever means it might be of that worker getting onto the platform, they're here. We have all the critical information that we need for that worker. So as I come in here, and again, primarily initially focusing on getting these workers paid, I'm kind of ignoring things here with timesheets and benefits and ACA management and all of that, but there's a lot that can be done on that side. And if we have time, we can spend a few minutes on that. But jumping in here to Bullhorn, again, reorienting everybody with kind of what we're looking at right here. So this is the Bullhorn One system. Some of you may be very familiar with this. Some of you may say, I have no idea what this is. But this is Bullhorn One. This is a record for a candidate, Jim Halpert, who has been placed into a job now. So this candidate record was created, here again within Bullhorn One. This candidate was placed into the available jobs that we have, and we can see right here, Jim Halpert, the candidate, was placed into this job ID, and so I can open up that record and again find all of the information about this particular candidate. Again, important things like social security number, birthday, address, all of this information here is viewable within Bullhorn One, but then all of that data flows automatically into the Greenshades platform. So if I search here for Jim, I'll find my Jim Halpert right here, and I can pull up his employee record, his employee digital folder, his employee profile, whatever you want to call this, this is really the core environment for this worker. So this is kind of the single source of where you can go to find everything related to payroll for this employee. So all of the relevant information about their employment details right here. We can come in at any point and we can add any notes into the system for this employee. We can manage their pay information here and set them up for a direct deposit or live checks or however, all of that needs to be structured. All that can be done within here. All of their personnel information here, again, name, address, date of birth, all those kinds of things are going to be loaded into the system. But again, not only are we pulling this from Bullhorn One, in the case of the example that I was just talking through, all of this, of course, can be modified directly here as well. So there's a lot of opportunities to manage these profiles and keep these up to date to make sure that ultimately your employees can get paid. And big picture, I mean, our end goal for all of this, the number one thing that we want to solve for and make it as easy as possible is to make sure that your workforce gets paid timely and accurately. Because quite frankly, you can be the greatest organization in the world, you can have wonderful incentives for your workers, and it can be a great environment and a fun environment and all of these kinds of things. But if employees aren't getting paid, eventually they're going to leave. And we've done a number of webinars and sessions over time, which some of you may have attended, where we're going through different stats around really how quickly some employees are to kind of jump ship and leave a job after their paychecks start bouncing or they start having issues with their paychecks. So it's really critical to get those things done accurately. And in fact, for me, this has always been kind of a really personal thing for me, because that's really how I kind of got started down this payroll path. Even actually, it was back when I was still in college, before I was actually managing restaurants, when I was working in restaurants. And in fact, it was a pretty high-end restaurant that I was working in, but the owner made a lot of bad decisions on a regular basis, and there was constantly issues with cashing paychecks. My paycheck bounced so many times, and it literally got to the point where on payday, all the cooks would be given the checks, and you'd be racing across the street to the bank. There was one bank in town. It was his bank, where he managed his funds, and we were just rushing to get that check cashed as quickly as possible, because once the money was gone, the money was gone. And then I ended up having to work with the Department of Labor in the state of Alabama, and then it made me quite interested in this topic, and then again ultimately led me down the path where I am today, where I'm quite passionate about making sure that workers get paid timely and accurately. So at the end, at the core of this, that's really what we're trying to solve for, is making that is as easy as possible for you to manage your organization, but then to again make sure that it's compliant and accurate. And so on that note, when we are again setting up these workers within this single profile here, all of the core information about this employee and all of the core details that are going to drive how this worker is getting paid are going to be managed directly in here. So all of their earning codes, their pay rates, all of this is set up here, their benefits and deductions. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on here at Greenshades is the compliance backbone that's built into all of our applications. And myself, certified payroll professional, member of the American Payroll Association, and regularly attending courses and webinars and sessions to keep up to date on things. And compliance is a very complex topic. One of the benefits that comes along with Greenshades is that we are in-house payroll. We do provide the control that really, especially organizations in the staffing industry, require, but we have that compliance backbone to take some of that burden off of those compliance regulations that can be quite challenging to deal with. So one of those being, just as an example, garnishments, right? So we've got workers, they may have a number of different child support orders, they may have federal tax levies or student loans or whatever it might be. All of those orders can be easily loaded into the platform. The critical information that we need, the applicable information is provided here, and then Greenshades is actually managing this process for you. So Greenshades, as we're going through the payroll process, we're going to ensure that, okay, these garnishments are taken out as required, but we're going to be calculating that disposable earning for each record, for each employee, taking the maximum available amount to ensure that that garnishment, that legal mandated withholding order is met, to the maximum amount, but we're not over withholding. And so it's a very fine line there. And certainly when we get into scenarios where a worker might have multiple orders, maybe multiple child support orders where they're having to be prorated, or maybe multiple orders of conflicting types. So again, maybe a student loan and some child support orders. Greenshades is automatically managing the priorities of those and the sequencing of those. That's all handled in the background automatically, nothing that you have to set up. You simply come in and say, hey, this is the type of order that it is, and then Greenshades is going to manage the rest of that. And it's a similar story when we look at taxes. And so, again, I'll walk through the process of what it looks like to get a worker paid, but just touching on this briefly, we get the worker paid. That's very important. But it's also, ideally, we want to make sure, not only for our sake, but also for the employee's sake, that we're withholding taxes correctly, right? Even if the employee's in a situation where, maybe their taxes are over withheld throughout the year and they end up getting a refund at the end of the year, sure, some employees might be happy when they get that refund, but at the same time, there's a lot of education that's been provided out there to workers that, hey, there's no sense in giving a tax-free loan to the IRS or to your state agencies. Try to hold on to as much of that money as you can. And so we want to ideally, be able to manage that workforce in a way to where if the employee is working in one state and maybe working in one state and living in a different state, if there's reciprocity agreements that are in place between those state lines, we want to make sure that we're honoring those, and we want to make sure that we're not over withholding. Again, even if the employee ultimately is going to get the money back when they file their personal income taxes, a lot of these workers are barely getting by week to week. We don't want to over withhold. And so what Greenshades is doing, along with our tax partner that we have, is we're going to automatically assign the correct taxes to the employee, activate those taxes that matter automatically. There's zero setup that's needed for that, but we'll automatically assign the appropriate taxes based on the applicable information. So again, that employee's home address and work address, all the things that are feeding into that, we'll assign those taxes automatically, and not just kind of assign them at kind of a core level, but we'll assign them on the individual pay runs. And so if a worker is working in multiple tax jurisdictions, maybe multiple work locations in the same pay period, we're going to split all of that out, and we'll break out that tax withholding as necessary. And so all that's managed automatically. And then it's not just the assignment of the taxes, but also those tax rates. And so, at the federal level, you're like, okay, that's fine. There's, we've got our FICA and a few things to keep up with. And then you get into the state level. Some states, hey, I'm located here in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida. We don't have any state income taxes. All right, Florida's pretty easy. Texas is pretty easy. There's a handful of states, I think 13 or so states that don't have any state income taxes. So that's not too bad. But then there's many states, of course, that do, in addition to unemployment. Some states that require the employees to participate in that unemployment. And then, of course, you get into local taxes. And all of a sudden you're dealing with thousands of tax jurisdictions. And so Greenshades is going to manage all of that, automatically assign those taxes, and keep those tax rates up to date as those tax rates change over time. So as you can probably see, I could sit here and talk about taxes for hours and hours. I won't bore everybody with that, but just want to highlight that again, we might be showing things high level and not going into the nitty-gritty detail and keeping scenarios pretty straightforward. But in all reality, there's a lot of complexity that goes into all of this, but the end result is that the user experience is, you don't even have to worry about it. All right, so again, along with the taxes, all that's going to be set up here. And then as we can see, and I'll jump back over here into the Bullhorn in just a minute, and I'll run through and do a pay run. But if I navigate here to this employee, take a look at their check history. Of course, we can go in and view the full pay history up here for all of our workers, but even within this single worker profile, we can come in here, we can see their check and see, hey, net wages of $228, but our gross wages were $288 right here. We could open up a copy of the check if we want, the check stub. But what you'll see as I navigate back in here into Bullhorn One is when we jump into this worker's profile again in Bullhorn One, we come in here to payable charges, and you'll see that we have some payable charges here, and these align. So what we just looked at a moment ago, this 288, gross wages 288, this is aligning with this pay run right here. And so as these payable charges are added for our workers within, in the case of Bullhorn One, when those wages are added in Bullhorn One, those payable charges, that's going to feed into the Greenshades pay run automatically. And so all this is going to feed over. And again, from a reconciliation standpoint, once payroll is processed, of course, the necessary data feeds back in to here. We can also manage adjustments through here. So you'll note that, you know, in here originally we had some wages that were sent over, then we needed to back that out. We needed to do an adjustment. We could apply a negative here. It's going to net out to a 0, and that adjustment will feed into Greenshades automatically. So within the Greenshades payroll engine, of course, if you need to void and reissue a check or do any kind of payroll adjustments, you can do that in Greenshades, but you can also simply make those adjustments in Bullhorn One, and we will account for that automatically. But there's one additional one in here that added recently. So I jump in here, I can see, all right, got a few transactions that I added here, kept it really simple. These are all the same basic thing, but across 3 different days, 8 hours, pay rate of $18 an hour. And then I'll jump in and show you what this looks like within, within Greenshades. One thing to note before I do that, as we're setting up these payable charges here, and again, you can do this from the worker profile screen, or you could jump into the main payable charges section within Bullhorn. There's multiple ways to navigate there, but I've left some of this information blank. Ultimately, it's up to you on how you want to structure that out. We have defaults in our system that you can establish per employee. So if the data is blank, we're going to revert to the default, but you can absolutely override any of those defaults by supplying values directly in here. And again, all that's going to feed over, including the location data that is then ultimately associated with that job posting and where that worker is assigned to, so that once we navigate in here into the payroll engine on Greenshades, we will again see all of this data flow over automatically. So I'll just jump in here into payroll and do that. So I set that up earlier before our call, before this call that we're on right now. And what we can see now as we navigate in here into the Greenshades payroll dashboard, and this is where we're going to go to operate all of our payroll. We can run reports here. We can, post back here, kind of in the post pay runs. We can post back necessary information to the general ledger and send back the critical data to Bullhorn. This is where we'll come at the end of the year to generate our W-2s and our 1095-C forms, especially if we're managing the Affordable Care Act compliance for you. Of course, do all our 941s and our tax reporting. But this is also where we're just going to go to run our payroll. And so we can structure however many payroll batches as we need. So we have one that's already in progress. This is the one that I just loaded here a moment ago. But if I click run payroll, I can see I have other scheduled payrolls coming up as well. So you can have as many payroll batches as you need. You can structure it out however you want. Maybe you want to do it by client. Maybe you want to do it by location, or maybe you just have one big payroll batch. That's totally up to you on how you want to structure those things out.
And Chris, I just want to highlight that, so important staffing organizations as they look to, earn wage access, same day pay. You can constantly be processing payroll in Greenshades. We're not charging per batch. You have the freedom, flexibility to get your employees paid whenever you like. Also being the modern in-house solution, there's no deadline in our side for payroll. So you're in complete control. You can really change your processes to attract those employees that are looking for those earned wage access, same day pay. Just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's very easy to operate these environments with multiple administrators in here at the same time. And you can easily come in here, add some workers to a pay run, or add something to the pay run and back out of it. Everything's saved automatically. As you can see, it's wizard based, a really straightforward 6-step process to get these workers paid, but a tremendous amount of flexibility that exists there. And we only have I only have this one employee set up in this payroll batch just for the sake of simplicity, again, walking through this. So this was Jim Halpert that I originally added in Bullhorn. That fed over. I added hours for him, and so that carries over into the hours and earnings. But if we need to add additional employees here, we can have as many employees in here as we need. If we need to supplement any of the hours that are coming from any system, we can do that here. So as Will mentioned at the top of our call, it's not dependent. You're not kind of having to kind of limit your current systems. And so if you have a time and attendance system that you love and you want the data to flow from there, we have APIs that can be connected to load the data in here. You can load in very simply by just manually adding additional hours in here. If you need to go that route for any workers, you can also load in through like a CSV or Excel import. So a lot of good and easy options to get that data over here. So for those, in total, there's 24 hours that have been added to that worker within the Bullhorn One profile. We rolled these up because they were across the same location. I will note though that if you had, again, I mentioned earlier, workers that worked multiple hours, but maybe they worked across different work locations, we're going to split those into separate rows here because those taxes are going to be calculated out separately. So it's, the number of rows you're going to have is just simply going to depend on how that's loaded in here. And then we have some additional details. So of course the gross pay, that all aligns with what we loaded in from, in our case, from the Bullhorn One environment. We could override that if we need. The client ID here, project, we have really any number of custom configurable codes that you want to structure, whatever it is that you want to kind of track for your workforce, that can be structured and controlled within the system so that ultimately everything, be it used for billing purposes or anything else, all that data can be constructed here. And so any number of dimensions that you want to track along with just your standard kind of position, department, location, you absolutely can have loaded in any of these pay runs. And then of course we'll have deductions and employee benefits. So again, simple setup. This employee, just one health insurance, right? Health insurance, benefits. These things are going to be loaded in here automatically. I've set it up before. I didn't set one up in this environment, but if you have employees that go into arrears, if you want to track arrears, we can absolutely do that for you. So if the employee has to underfund the deduction for a particular paycheck because they're short on funds, we can track those arrears for you and automatically apply those to future pay runs. And of course, just like with the hours and earnings, if we need to manually add deductions or benefits to the pay run through the user interface or through an import process or an API, we can, of course, most definitely do that. So just for the sake of time, I'll continue on here. Again, big picture going back, we got the gross pay, 432, gross pay here at the 432 from the Bullhorn. Again, we haven't edited any of this information. If we needed to, of course, we could have. You have full control along the way. You got a nice summary across the top as well. Again, we're just dealing with one employee, so the summary is the same thing you're going to see on the by row detail. However, when we're dealing with more realistically dozens of employees or maybe even hundreds of employees, it's really nice to kind of have those headline figures there to make sure, do that sanity check to make sure that aligns with what you are expecting. And before you finalize anything, before you post anything, as kind of a final sanity check, you can go into any of these employee records and view a preview of what this pay record is going to look like. So if you need to clear any of this stuff out, override any of these figures here, you can absolutely do that. And then of course, once we save that, it'll save and recalculate all of the taxes there for us. And then once we're done, we're simply just going to click submit, and then we will move on with the next step. Now typically, and just for the sake of time here, I'm just going to jump in, and I've submitted quite a few payrolls recently, so I'll just leave that one open here for the moment in case we need to go back to that for any reason. But after we finish a payroll, we have the opportunity to run through the post-payroll process where we can review everything, we can download all of our reports, do anything that we need to do with this, produce our ACH file for the bank. We have our detailed benefit deduction breakdown here. And then of course, very importantly, we have all of our tax details that are broken down here. So we have full visibility into all of this. This is articulating exactly what we need to do when it comes to managing our taxes. But we're using the Greenshades Payroll tax service, so all we have to do is say, hey, let's pay those taxes. It's going to take us directly to the tax service screen where we can review all of our liabilities, and without leaving Greenshades Online, we can simply review these and file the returns, and click file return, click pay now when we're ready. One of the things I just want to highlight here, I definitely want to save some time for any questions that we have, but just a quick note for the taxes, because this is critical for businesses, especially perhaps if you're outsourcing payroll today. Typically compliance is the biggest reason why people want to outsource payroll. However, again, especially in staffing, there's a really high value to having control over critical aspects of your business. And so one of the things that's a little bit different about Greenshades than other providers is that we're kind of a hybrid solution, and that yes, we are in-house payroll, and that you have, again, full control. You're coming in here, you're reviewing the screens, making sure things look good. When it comes to the taxes, what we're actually doing is calculating all these due dates for you automatically using the jurisdiction requirements that are in place. So we're doing all those look back period calculations to understand what payment frequencies you should have, what filing frequencies you should have. And then from here, we're telling you, hey, these are your reports, these are when they're due, and you can navigate through the site here to submit those tax returns and submit the payments directly from here. So we'll take these returns. If you want to edit anything, you're certainly able to do that. If you need to account for some third-party data, maybe data that's not processed within Greenshades for whatever reason, you can absolutely do that. But then we'll submit those tax returns to the tax agencies, and then when it comes to the payments, one of the big differentiators, and it's been, I'll say it's come quite a bit recently, as of today, the time that we're recording this webinar, a lot of banking conversations that are taking place right now, a lot of uncertainty out there. Greenshades never touches your funds, right? We don't touch your money at all. We say, in the case of Colorado here, we're saying, hey, you owe $30 to Colorado. You say, great. Okay, when is this due? All right, it's due in a couple weeks, or it's due tomorrow, or whatever. You're going to come out here, you're going to click pay now. You're going to, just like if you're doing like an online bill payment, you're going to say, all right, do you want to pay this now? Do you want to pay it on its due date? You want to schedule it for a future date? So you control that cash flow. And then on that date that you select that you want the payment to be made, what we're actually going to do is send an authorization to your bank, and your bank is going to send that money directly to that tax jurisdiction, or in other situations, depends on the jurisdiction, it's the reverse of that, where we say, hey, jurisdiction, take X number of dollars from your bank. So again, we provide the full history here for reconciliation purposes and show you all the payments that you've made, but you can literally go to your bank account, your bank statement, and see precisely when and where that money went to, because you're not paying Greenshades for your workers to get your workers paid for your direct deposit. Of course, live checks, you can print those yourselves right from here, or have Greenshades print and mail those checks for you. If they're direct deposit, you can download that ACH file, take it to your bank, and your bank will disperse those funds to those workers' accounts. And then for the taxes, it's the same thing. We're sending a electronic communication to them, but the money is going directly from your account to that provider. So Greenshades is never touching any of the funds. We're just making the process easier to authorize and initiate that. So just some big things, and again, could spend a lot of time talking through all that stuff. For the sake of time, I won't go into any more detail, but a lot that we could go in there. And then of course, when it comes to year-end taxes, W-2s, 1095Cs on ACAs, even 1099 forms for our vendors, all that can be done through Greenshades. And of course, any kind of reporting that you need to do, full reporting dashboard here, where you can even build out very configurable reports and even do a full data extract from the system if you want. So
I just want to jump in here, Chris. We have some questions here, but it's kind of the last message I want to leave everybody with. If you're looking for a modern payroll solution with built-in compliance, but you're not looking to, outsource the tax payments, provide that flow, if you want to maintain control of your payroll processes, I think we're going to be, the best fit for you. See, on the staffing side, like I said, we have a lot of internal knowledge around, the complexities you face. So, really like to speak more in depth with you, learn about your business, and how we can improve processes. Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.